Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Shropshire Council's Cabinet meeting of Wednesday, the 12th of February 2025. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. And can I also remind members to please identify your name and role before speaking so that it's clear to those who are watching or listening to the meeting as to who is making the comments. With Cabinet colleagues, I'll start that again. With Cabinet colleagues' agreement, I will be moving items here. Government consultation strengthening the standards and conduct framework for local authorities. That's a title that trips off the tongue, isn't it? I shall be moving those up the agenda and we'll take them immediately after the scrutiny item 6A. So on to the agenda itself. Yes. I'll try that one. Hopefully that's okay. So item number 1 is apologies for absence. Now I have apologies for absence from Councillor Dan Morris. We are also missing at the moment Councillor Rob Macy, who I understand is stuck in traffic. And he was a bit concerned about Councillor Jones and Schofield, but they're sitting opposite me, so they've obviously made it in. You were ahead of him, so he will be joining us as soon as he possibly can. Item number 2 is disclosable pecuniary interests. Do I have any of those? Nope. Okay. Item number 3 is the minutes of the last meeting held on the 4th of December. I'm happy to propose those. Do I have a second?
Councillor Nellens, Deputy Leader, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, so moving on. Before we start today's meeting, I'm going to invite the Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holder for all things waste and climate change to make a statement. Councillor Nellens.
Thank you. I'm going to make a statement about the Household Recycling Centre booking system. This booking system has been in place since November. Prior to the booking system being introduced, there was no data held to indicate who was using the sites and when they were using the sites. The booking system has provided us with that data. There's been a lot of positives, and I'd like to thank our residents for their cooperation and patience during this trial period. We said we would run a 3-month trial. During last month's scrutiny meeting, I said we are checking the data, but at that time, the informal cabinet had already made the decision that some changes were needed. We know we have deterred a lot of illegal trade waste. We know we have turned away many non-Shropshire residents. We also know that many Shropshire residents embraced the change and commented on how easy the process was. We also had complaints from residents, many of whom admitted they hadn't even tried to make a booking, but felt the system didn't work. We also appreciate that the phone booking was not good. We have listened to the residents, we have looked at the data, and we have made the following decisions. Vans and trailers must make a booking as per normal. Cars no longer need. Is that me or is that? Cars no longer need to book. Visitors to the HRC must be prepared to show proof of residency in Shropshire. We wrote to Veolia last week to inform them of these changes. They have responded and are now looking at preparing to implement the changes. It is hoped these changes will be in place from next Monday, the 17th of February, or as near as possible to that date. In summary, the booking system works to deter trade and non-Shropshire waste arriving at our 5 household recycling centres. From next week, all HRC users will need to be able to show proof of residency in Shropshire. That's a driving licence, council tax or utility bill or equivalent. Vans and trailers must book. Cars no longer need to book. This may cause some waiting, but we have listened to our residents and we've amended. I just remind you that the booking system came at no additional cost to Shropshire Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ian. Okay, so moving on to the main part of the agenda, we start with public questions. We have 6 public questions, and the first question is from Mr. Keith Trubshaw, who I understand is in the room. If you'd like to come and sit at the, you might be better off going to the chair next to Rosemary. Yeah, you can have mine, I think.
Good morning.
And you're ready.
Some of my questions have been addressed in the last statement. It's in connection with the booking system for the tip. There'd never been any chaos. It had always run very well. I was going to say, I know that Wolverhampton Council use proof of address when you come in. I fully appreciate the comment regarding the fact that now only trailers and vans need to book in. However, my experience is of the Bridge North site. If a trailer is not allowed in, or if it is too early, it has to wait at the gate. That will cause a queue on the road behind it. What mechanism is there to accommodate that, in as much as will it be allowed to drive around and come back again? Or because otherwise there will be a queue on the road. Doubtless there will be a queue on the road because there's one vehicle in, and if somebody's waiting, let's say they get there at, I don't know, 10 to 1 and the appointment's at 1 o'clock, all the people behind are going to not be able to get past because the barrier won't open.
Thank you, and I appreciate that your question has somewhat been subsumed by the previous answer, but Councillor Nellins will answer the question you originally put in, because I think there's some data in there, but also, well, I'll let you answer the second part. Councillor Nellin.
Thanks very much for your question and for your comments. The booking system aims were to help reduce congestion and queuing times, which you just mentioned. This is why the sites are not as busy as the slots have been managed to 15 minutes slots at present. Increased recycling, as staff are able to engage better with visitors as they put their waste into the correct recycling containers. Reduce the amount of trade waste taken to centres. Not only is it illegal for businesses to dispose of their waste on our sites, Shropshire residents pay in order to process that waste. Open to all Shropshire residents with no restrictions on the number of visits residents can make by car. In the first 2 months, there were over 55,000 bookings for the majority of these the residents. The system worked. Introduction of the new system, there was always going to be some teething problems. In this instance, we had asked our contractors to be pragmatic with residents turn up either early or late to accommodate this as much as possible. This has been difficult at some sites at the weekend. The decision to you mentioned about closing, which is a step towards that. The decision to close the sites on 1 or 2 days a week had already been taken. However, the decision was made to keep them all open. And you may remember that we had consulted on the possibility of closing 2 of the household recycling centres on a permanent basis. On your question about trailers and congestion, that's what we employ our contractors for, and it's really an operational reason that we can speak to them to do it. They need to put that in place, and that's for contractors to really make that work. It's an operational responsibility that they should do on our behalf.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask?
Sorry, no, you can't come back, okay, unfortunately, but thank you very much for coming in.
You can ask me afterwards if you want.
Yeah, so if you're going to stay until the very, very end, which might be quite long today. Before we go on to the next public question, can I ask that our participants who are online, i.e. our own members who are online, to ensure that you remain muted, because that's what's causing the feedback in the system at the moment. I'll bring you in when required. So moving on to the second question, which Tim Collard is going to read for us. It's from Graham Betts. And can I suggest, Tim, that we allow Chris to answer Councillor Chris Schofield to answer the individual questions one after the, you know what I mean? So that Chris can answer after you read each question, because I think otherwise it's going to get too complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
So the first part of the question is this. I do not understand the reply to my question at Cabinet on the 17th of July 2024. I was advised to contact Councillor Schofield for clarification. I received no reply. May I please have a reply? Having read the details provided by Councillor Schofield, I must clarify my question referred specifically to Red Deer Road, which has been adopted, and not the attached Bowbrook development, which has not been adopted. You provided details of various legislation, but did not mention the 1988 Road Traffic Act, Section 21, unlawful parking on cycle paths, and how Shropshire Council proposed to work with the police to ensure adequate compliance of the law. The issue of concern is not that the route is a cycle path, but cars are repeatedly parked on it, and the lack of signage is cited as a fundamental cause.
Chris Schofield to answer the first part.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Chris Schofield, portfolio holder for planning and Regulatory Services. Shropshire Council do not have powers to enforce parking issues unless parking traffic regulations orders are in place. The police can intervene and could prosecute under Section 137 of the Highways Act 1980, which means willfully obstructing the highway without lawful authority or excuse. Section 21 of the Road Traffic Act 1988, which is the prohibition of driving or parking on cycle tracks, or Section 22 of the Road Traffic Act 1988, leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position so as to cause an injury. Obstructed parking can be one of interpretation, and the circumstances presented at the time are considered on each occasion. Shropshire Council's traffic engineering team regularly liaise with West Mercia Police over a number of matters. The parking issues raised have been added to Shropshire Council's list to monitor and will consider the introduction of traffic regulation orders. But these will be in line with other priorities and available funding. Funding is extremely limited and needs to consider many demands and needs across the county. With current funding primarily focused on personal injury accident sites, we therefore suggest residents liaise with their local town council and councillor who may be able to support their case and help us prioritise what we do moving forwards through the place plan process, which looks at utilising other funding opportunities.
Thank you, Chris. Tim, the second part of the question.
Regarding the specific mention of Section 11.11.3, Chapter 3, Traffic Signs Manual 2019, I do not understand the subsequent comment. Due to the current status of the route and the guidance, it's not a requirement to provide repeater signs. Can you expand on this? In particular, the term current status. Red Deer Road cannot have a status beyond adopted. Question.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Chris Schofield.
The reference to the status of the route was in relation to the Bowbrook Meadows, which was referenced with the Red Deer Road in the original question. In accordance with the response to the original question placed in July 2024, the guidance suggests that repeater signs may be placed along the route. As outlined to the previous matter raised above with regard to parking, this has been added to Shropshire Council's list to monitor.
Thank you. And the final part, I believe.
I also refer to 11.11.4 in the manual and the designated sign 1057. Only one of these exists, with nothing to notify persons that it is a cycle track from Midden Road towards Hanwood Road. This is an omission needing immediate address. Additionally, the sign at Hanwood Road is becoming obliterated.
And finally, Chris.
In accordance with the response to the question raised in July 2024, we are aware of the concerns raised by residents with regard to the lack of repeaters along the route and the conflict that has occurred on occasion between road users. We are therefore looking into the matter and will liaise with the developers prior to adoption. I may thank Mr. Betts for his email and question.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on to the third question, which is from Emma Bullard. Emma, if you'd like to come and sit at the table, please. Thank you. And when you're ready.
Thank you. Shropshire Council's active travel manager has left the authority, and so has at least one Shropshire Highways officer who was dealing with active travel schemes. Please can you tell us whether the authority any longer has capacity to improve active travel infrastructure? If so, has the relevant work programme been published and where can it be seen? When will it be available if it is not currently? In particular, what work is being done to design and implement the priority LC WIP schemes? The local cycling and walking infrastructure plan was approved by Cabinet in March 2024. What work is being done to design and implement active travel schemes in Shrewsbury Town Centre? Despite what Councillor Morris claimed in September 2024, such schemes are not dependent on whether the North West Road is delivered. This has been made clear in numerous reports, including the Big Town Plan, Shrewsbury Moves Strategy, and the Master Plan for the Riverside redevelopment. And recently a toucan crossing was installed on Otley Road in Shrewsbury. And that design has made conditions on that busy road substantially worse for cycling. Was the design of that scheme signed off by anyone with a brief for active travel or sustainable school travel? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thanks for your question, Emma. Shropshire Council is currently going through a resizing process as it works towards a new model and financial sustainability. An inevitable consequence of that has been reduction in staffing numbers, with voluntary redundancy playing a part in that process. The organisational structure is currently being reviewed from top down, and all areas of the council will need to be considered within the new operating model and how services are then reshaped. The council retains a strong internal active travel team who are working closely with Active Travel England and local stakeholders to deliver on its stated priorities around school streets and priorities as outlined within our approved local walking cycling infrastructure plan. Funding has already been received through Active Travel England for the furthering of this programme in 25-26, and many schemes will move from concept to design in that period across the county. The council has committed to prioritising delivery of the Shrewsbury North West Relief Road, Shrewsbury Big Town Plan, the Shrewsbury Move Strategy and the Master Plan for the Riverside Development. The synergies and cumulative active travel benefits to the town of all these initiatives have been fully detailed to date in exhaustive local consultations and are fully aligned with the wider emerging local transport plan. As regards specific schemes designs, these are fully reviewed as it is required through road safety audit procedures, which, where appropriate, will also be assessed in the light of current active travel design guidance. With reference to the Otley Road Toucan Crossing, road safety audits recommended cycle lane provision, which was subsequently included in design updates. Regrettably, installation did not include the design revisions, which have now been addressed and will be rectified on the 15th of February. These works will include cycle lanes and shortened zigzags, mitigating potential vehicle movements that may pose a danger to cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nellens. Now, I have a slight complication because my questions are out of order from the ones that I've got on my agenda. So, having said all of that, I believe that the next question is actually from Matt Lakin regarding the Albrighton Village Action Group, but I'm going to ask Alison to come forward and ask the questions. Thank you, Alison. Do come and join us. I'm sure Rosemary will show you how to use, well, whichever seat you want to, Rosemary or Roger, I'm sure will show you how to use the microphone.
You're live.
Thank you.
Okay, Albrighton Village Action Group's campaign against Boningale Homes' opportunistic overdevelopment proposal has highlighted why Shropshire's local plan is so important. Local plans are critical in preventing unsustainable, inappropriately sized developments on the wrong side of villages, far from commuter train stations and motorways, causing irreparable damage to our communities, heritage, farmland and vital greenbelt. Greenbelt surrounding Albrighton is of paramount importance not only to Shropshire, but also to the distinctive character and agricultural landscape of the broader Black Country and Birmingham region. Shropshire's proposed response to the Planning Inspectorate presents two potential outcomes. If accepted, the Council will have 6 months to identify sites for 1,500 additional housing using existing sustainability assessments, followed by launching a new local plan and call for sites from autumn 2025. If not accepted, a new local plan and call for sites would need to start immediately, just 8 months earlier. In either scenario, how will Shropshire ensure that speculative, unsustainable developments do not proceed? We must avoid housing projects that are unsuitable for our communities, poorly scaled, located away from transport hubs, and encroach on critical greenbelt land. This risk is underscored by 1,120 objections registered on the Shropshire Planning Portal and over 3,700 residents who petitioned against Boningale Homes' unsustainable proposal. This is 80% of Albrighton's electoral roll. Shouldn't a new call for sites be initiated now to allow ample time to identify the most suitable locations and secure the best possible outcome for Shropshire.
Thank you very much indeed. To answer the question, Councillor Chris Schofield.
Councillor Chris Schofield, Portfolio Holder, Planning and Regulatory Services. Thank you for your question. Firstly, subject to Cabinet agreement today, it is hoped the positive and pragmatic response to the local plan inspectors will enable the continuation of the current local plan process and allow the Council to adopt the plan in mid-2026. As the question correctly states, it is, however, also recognised that further plan making is necessary regardless of this situation, starting later in 2025, due to the Council's changing housing need position as a direct result of the national changes to the standard methodology placed under local authorities. At this stage, the Council considers the most appropriate time to undertake a call for sites is later in 2025 to inform the next plan making process. Also, as a direct result of these national changes to the housing need calculation, Shropshire cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. In these circumstances, the National Planning Policy Framework's presumption in favour of sustainable development is afforded more weight in decision making. The Cabinet report sets out the implications of this housing land supply position on decision making. It also recognises that it is likely to be an upturn in speculative proposals as a result of this situation. However, it is important to emphasise it is a presumption. It is in favour of sustainable development, not all developments. For speculative proposals, the Council will therefore need to assess on a case-by-case basis whether it would lead to genuine sustainable development. And in doing so, it will need to consider a range of material considerations, including, where relevant, the evidence base prepared to support the local plan. The Cabinet paper specifically identifies relevant parts of national policy important in assessing overall sustainability, being whether or not the development is in a sustainable location, if it makes efficient use of land, secures well-designed places, and provides affordable housing. In addition, National Greenbelt policy will continue to apply to relevant applications. Consultee comments will also be considered in the application process. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you all for coming. Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to question, the fourth question, just to clarify, a question from Mr. Streetley was actually sent to the Transformation and Improvement Scrutiny Committee yesterday. It was plainly a question for the portfolio holder, so the chair referred the question on to Cabinet. However, Mr. Streetley already has a question on this agenda and we've already got 6 questions. So as the question on today's agenda is different to the question he sent to Scrutiny, I will ask if that's okay that the question that went to Scrutiny yesterday is added to our agenda for the 5th of March, please, Ashley. So the next question is from Mike Streetley. So Tim is going to read
Chairman,
that.
On a point of order, I understood this question was asked at yesterday's Scrutiny Committee and it was refused on legal advice on the expectation that it would be spoken to and raised today. So the decision now is to overturn that and say it isn't going. Is that what was said? Sorry.
Tim?
So that is what happened. So it was felt that it wasn't an appropriate question for the chair of scrutiny to answer. It was directed explicitly at the portfolio holder who wasn't at the meeting and unable to answer it. So it was referred to Cabinet. Cabinet have decided to take it at the next meeting. Seems perfectly reasonable.
We turned down questions for today. So
There has been precedent because of the short notice as well. It could be added to the list, surely, as a one-off because of what has happened.
no,
And also, I was a little bit surprised yesterday that the chair had not contacted the cabinet member, the portfolio holder, to obtain a written answer to it.
No, let me be very clear about this. The reason that was turned down yesterday is because it was clearly a question for the portfolio holder. Questions for portfolio holders should come before Cabinet, not to a scrutiny committee. Scrutiny committee chair answers questions for the Scrutiny Committee. The subject matter, I understand, of the question was also not relevant to that Scrutiny Committee, which is why it would need to come to Cabinet. So we've already got a question from Mr. Streetley today, so I don't have the answer anyway for the question he raised yesterday, but I'm happy to take it to the next Cabinet. Rosemary?
Yeah, I just want to say that I've read the question and I understand the answers that were given yesterday, but I think it's unfortunate that this is happening because the question is about a lack of transparency ultimately.
Can I also say that I think it might
to push him on a month is a bit unfortunate.
Well, that's all I can do. But I would also say that for me, there seems to be a significant number of questions being tried to put in through the routes that aren't appropriate. And I would say that if anybody in the public domain wants a question from the portfolio holder, it needs to come to this meeting, not to a scrutiny meeting. Right. Tim, can you read Mr. Streetley's question from today? And again, can we split it into parts?
Yes. So the first part of his question is this. The financial strategy identifies a budget uplift of £111 million for the North West Relief Road, a movement of £99 million from the previous strategies. This is very late in the day for such a large movement when the council knew in autumn 2022 that the cost had at least doubled. It seems from the strategy document that the council believes that the £111 million will all be met by additional grant funding. So part one, could you please clarify what other sources of income apart from grant funding are identified within the financial strategy for meeting the full cost for the North West Relief Road / Oxon Link Road, and how much is expected from each?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And just to be clear, Councillor Morris is unable to be here today, so I'm answering the question on his behalf. Further information regarding this will be provided when the medium-term financial strategy is presented to Council on the 27th of February 2025. Next question, Tim.
The full business case for the North West Relief Road was due to be submitted to full council for consideration in September 2024. Could you please confirm the date that it will now be submitted and the reasons for this delay?
The North West Relief Road full business case and the date at which it will be considered by Council will be announced following the issue of full planning notice by the local planning authority. The most recent delay has been due to the project's latest carbon projections and mitigation plan being evaluated and approved by Northern Planning Committee. Part 3, Tim.
Could you also please confirm the implications of this further delay on the construction programme, brackets start and end dates, and cost, and whether these further increases are factored into the financial strategy?
Thank you, Tim. The programme to completion to be submitted as part of the FBC fully accommodates any delay to date, and the full business case costs are also in line with this programme. The financial strategy will reflect the most up-to-date figures we have going forwards. Thank you, Tim. And then finally, we have a question from Jamie Russell, which again is to be read by Tim. And Tim, you can read this as one. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, brackets climate change, in the financial monitoring report for quarter 3, 2024-25 states the Council's financial strategy supports its strategies for climate change and carbon reduction in several ways. However, the financial strategy itself includes a £100 million uplift provision for the North West Relief Road. Recent carbon reports have shown that building the North West Relief Road will prevent the council from achieving its net zero by 2030 target. Meanwhile, I understand a complaint has been made to the monitoring officer about the North Planning Committee unilaterally voting to scrap the net zero 2030 target that was previously agreed by full council. Clearly, the North West Relief Road is not compatible in any way with the council's previously agreed net zero plans. With this in mind, please can you correct the wording of item 6 to read the council's financial strategy means it will no longer be able to achieve its stated aims for climate change and carbon reduction?
Thank you, Tim. And finally, Councillor Ian Nullins to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, for your question. The revisions to the carbon management approach for the Shrewsbury North West Relief Road were considered by Northern Planning Committee on the 21st of January 2025. The ongoing broader alignment with the Council's existing carbon and climate change commitments and the ability of the project to discharge its carbon obligation both in terms of methodology, timeframe and allocated funding within the project budget were both accepted by the committee. Further information on the agreed approach and its links to the Council's current carbon and climate change obligations are in the public domain as part of the committee papers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the end of the public questions. Moving on now to member questions. First question comes from Councillor Joyce Barrow, who's also, oh, well, look at that. That's.
Thank you. I'm directing this at Dean Carroll. I thought it was Mark Jones. It's been some time since work began on the Innovation Park in Oswestry. Can you update me, please, as to whether the council intend to develop the site or whether the council are seeking a developer to take this forward? I know there's been interest from businesses wishing to locate to the Innovation Park. Is this still the case? And are there any timescales in place for businesses to be on site? Do we have any idea how many jobs might be created? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barrow. Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joyce, for the question. The Oswestry Innovation Park is a project that we're all very excited about seeing brought forward. Work on the Oswestry Innovation Park is progressing with infrastructure works, including the construction of site roads and incoming utilities being undertaken. The objective of developing the Innovation Park is to enable serviced employment land plots to become available. Interest from businesses wishing to locate or purchase a plot on the Innovation Park continues to be received and logged. Shropshire Council has appointed halls to market the plots, but will also consider any offers from developers interested in purchasing the entire site for development. In terms of timescales, the current infrastructure contract will be completed in summer 2025, as was previously committed to, with ongoing utilities works to be finished later this year. The development of the units will then be led by developers acquiring and seeking planning permission for sites within their own timescales. In answer to your final question, an economic assessment conducted as part of the original outline planning application forecast that over 1,000 jobs could be created as a result of the overall site development, based on the assumed mix of end uses included within the outline planning application, and that would be a significant boost to the Oswestry, North Shropshire and wider county economy.
Thank you. Joyce obviously doesn't have a supplementary question because she's off. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question, which has been received from Councillor Alex Wagner, but Councillor Evans is going to read the question. Roger?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Roger Evans from the Longdon Division, but asking it on behalf of Councillor Wagner, as you say. As part of the planning process for the Leighton Park estate, completed in 2019, Shropshire Council obtained funds for a crossing from the Shelton Cricket Club to Oxon Primary School. This well-used footpath has terrible visibility over to the school, is often overgrown or flooded, and has speeding cars go past who are often unaware there is a crossing. After a 6-year saga, which contained regular promises of action and indeed start dates for works, it now departed senior officer cancelled the scheme with zero consultation with either the public or myself as a local member. Pupils at Oxon Primary deserve a safe route to school, and that crossing requires physical safety improvements, whether a full crossing or not is possible. School streets, as cited as an alternative, do not solve the specific safety problem. Where is our money? Where is our crossing? And why does Shropshire Council seem so pathologically unable to deliver this simple, privately funded improvement, the road safety of Shrewsbury school children?
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Chris Schofield.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Chris Schofield, Portfolio Holder for Planning Regulatory Services. I thank Councillor Wagner for his question. The proposed works along Racecourse Lane form part of a planning obligation attached to Planning Permission 14/02402/4, which required the developer of the former Shelton Hospital to provide a pedestrian access and associated raised table crossing on Racecourse Lane. Works commenced on site to create the pedestrian access. However, Works to install the proposed raised table crossing were subsequently put on hold due to strong objections received from neighbouring properties and concerns regarding the health and safety of workers on site, resulting in the developer incurring abortive costs and being instructed not to proceed with the works. Regrettably, as an authority, we do not hold a Section 106 financial contribution to contribute to funding these works. But in acknowledgement of the concerns raised, Shropshire Council proceeded with a project to introduce a crossing point. Unfortunately, through the design period, we undertook utility searches and found a medium pressure gas main and a high voltage cable is under where we need to put the crossing. As such, there would be significant cost associated with moving them, as there are no options to amend the design to work around it due to its location. The decision was taken not to progress the works, but looking into making Racecourse Lane a school street. It is acknowledged that this is not the solution local stakeholders are looking for, but Shropshire Council's Sustainable Travel team are committed to working with Oxon Primary School to monitor the situation and support where possible. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got a supplementary.
I didn't, Chairman, but reading the answer now, can I just ask that a conversation and a discussion be held with the local member as well as the primary school?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah. Sure, that'd be
That's fine, Councillor Evans.
Makes sense. It's a difficult one, that one. Moving on to the next question is from Councillor Tracy Huffer, but that question is going to be read for her by Councillor Andy Boddington, who I think is joining us online. Councillor Boddington?
Yes, thank you. It's a question for Dan Morris, who's not here, portfolio for highways. Well, could you say when the resurfacing of Gravel Hill will take place? This road is undoubtedly the worst condition of any road in Ludlow and generates possibly the most complaints by residents. I would add it's actually the most complaints. For the last 7 years, Highway promised that it was in the works programme for repairs, only to be told at the last minute as it has been moved into the following financial year. Therefore, can it be promised for the next year, and can it be confirmed that this is in the work programme? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boddington. Could you mute your microphone now? Thank you.
Yeah, we have a supplementary, but I'll mute now.
Okay, I'll ask you back in, Andy, don't worry. So I'm going to answer the question on behalf of Councillor Morris. Road surfacing is prioritised county-wide in line with our asset management plan and our available budgets. We are in the process of reviewing the priorities for maintenance across the county using the most recent condition data. This particular area has deteriorated in recent years and is now becoming, if not is, one of our higher priority sites. The scheme is currently in the 25-26 resurfacing programme. Councillor Boddington, you can come back in with your supplementary.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, come back in. Yeah. Thank you.
Back in. So it's another road problem, and you'll need to take this one away. There is a massive pothole, and it is massive. It's growing literally by the day on Clee Hill on the corner of Downton View. Now, this is so large that we had a relief bus driver on a few weeks back, and he went at normal speed, which is 20 miles an hour on that road, and he wrecked the back axle. The bus was taken off the road. The regular bus drivers know to go at 5 miles an hour, and the people at the back know you get that bounce when you go over a bump in the bus. So this was first reported on the 3rd of December 2024.
Andy, what's your supplementary question?
The question is, could this be repaired urgently?
Yeah, okay, leave that one with me. I will, and again, if you can mute your mic rather than mic your mute, I will send a message to Andy Wild immediately after this meeting. Thank you very much, Andy. Moving on, the next question is from Councillor Roger Evans. Roger?
Thank you, Chairman. I note that it may well want to be asked in sections, so I will do that and maybe get the answer before I read the next part of it. I'll read the first section. Councillor Roger Evans from the London Division. I note the financial strategy was published on Thursday evening. Also, that notices have recently been distributed to householders, residents, concerning payments that have to be made for their garden waste bins emptied. This notice states, and I quote, "You have until 31st of March 2025 to subscribe to our garden waste service. After that, you won't be able to sign up until 1st of September 2025 for the following year's subscription." When was this decision made? Who made it and why?
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Ian Nellens.
Thank you, Councillor Nellens, portfolio holder for climate change, environment and transport. The decision was made by Shropshire Council's Cabinet as part of the medium-term financial strategy 24-25, agreed on the 21st of February 24, following a public consultation. The reason for this approach is as follows. Shropshire Council pays its contractor Veolia to provide a waste service to 138,000 properties. However, whilst we have a target of 70% participation in green waste collection service, or around 96,500 properties, existing subscriptions currently stand at just over 67,000. We therefore placed a cut-off date to encourage as many residents to subscribe as possible, so we are clear of the scale of the service Veolia has to provide. The risk would otherwise be that Veolia could be running half-empty collection trucks throughout Shropshire, with residents paying for that service. The intention of the Council's green waste service is to provide it to only those who want it, and for it to be self-financing. This can only be achieved when the service reaches a maximum subscription or capacity, which has been set as at the 31st of March. After this time, the collection rounds will be restructured to maximise the efficiency, and any savings will be shared with the Council. This will inevitably reduce the opportunity for further residents to join the scheme until the next subscription window. However, the alternative would be to pay Veolia to run vehicles half empty to assure capacity for potential additional subscribers to fill the vehicle and cover the costs. The Council's finances do not permit us to fund such a speculative arrangement.
Right. Go on. Councillor Nellens.
Thank you. Additional registrations can be processed after the 31st of March on a case-by-case basis. New residents to the area can still apply, but they still will need to pay the full cost of £56. They could decide to wait until the next subscription window, or they could take their garden waste to any of the household recycling centres for free.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. This will, of course, also affect anyone moving into a Shropshire home whose previous owner did not subscribe for this garden waste service. Is this not a vindictive action taken by the council against those who decided not to renew or pay to have their green bin emptied until the new growing season starts?
Councillor Ian Nellens.
No, this is a practical decision made to ensure maximum efficiency, cost control and value for money. However, as previously stated, applications can still be considered on a case-by-case basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a supplementary,
You
Chairman.
can have a supplementary, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really disappointed at this answer, especially concerning on behalf of those residents living in rural areas. I understand the policy supported by a majority decision at council. These would need to pay £56 no matter what date it was requested from. This is, to my mind, potentially discrimination, especially when the potential customer would pay £56 for a very limited number of collections. Are you still maintaining that policy for throughout Shropshire, please?
Councillor Nellens.
Yeah, I think it's really fair to say that we've advertised this since August of last year. This has been going on. So anybody who wanted to have a green bin has had up until the 31st of March. That's 9 months to consider if they want to participate. For those who haven't decided and want to do it at a later stage, we have said there is a case-by-case basis for that to do, but they should have understood from the word go that it has going to be a £56 charge, and that is fair to everybody. So I don't think anybody's being discriminated in that way. It is, as I said, it's a choice. A lot of people have decided they don't want to do it. A lot of people have decided they will do other arrangements, such as take it to household recycling centres or to compost at home, and they are free to do that. That is a choice that they are free to make. But we will accommodate anybody who has moved to the area or has moved to a different house on a case-by-case basis, as already stated. Thank you.
Can I just make ask a point of information on this, please?
You can.
Just to ask, how would residents apply for a sort of case-by-case permission to
just
enroll?
in the normal way and be considered a case-by-case basis. It's the normal application.
Through online or by telephone? Yeah.
Either, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah. Turned it off, switched it on. I think that brings us to the end of our questions now. So the next item is the item 6A, recommendations from the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee from the 14th of November. Councillor Joyce Barrow.
Morning, everyone, again. I'm here to present the recommendations of the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 14th of November 2024 regarding strategic developments relating to water management and river water quality. At their meeting on the 14th of November, the Economy, Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee considered two related items: strategic developments on water management and the follow-up on progress against delivery of the committee's previous recommendations on river water quality. During this meeting, the committee heard from various witnesses, including the Executive Director of Place, the Strategic Partnerships Manager, the Drainage and Flood Risk Manager, and the River 7 Partnership Advanced Wireless Innovation Region Programme Manager. That's a mouthful. Following this, the Economy and Environment Committee made 9 recommendations focusing on strategic developments in water management and river water quality. Of these, 5 recommendations are being presented to Cabinet for a decision, and 1 is for their awareness. Cabinet are being asked to respond to those recommendations using the template at Appendix 1, which will be shared with the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the next meeting. The progress and impact of these recommendations will then be tracked by the committee moving forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barrow. I think in the time-honoured fashion, I might need to ask Tim for advice here, but the plan was that we take this away, come back with filled in the template, but I think, does it have to come back to Cabinet at the next meeting before it goes to scrutiny, Tim?
No. Cabinet need to agree anything.
Yes.
They need to do it
in Cabinet. Yeah, so I think you'll find that we will attempt, I think we talked about this on Monday, and we will attempt to bring this back to the next meeting of Cabinet, which is the 5th of March, so that it can be taken to the very next meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the new council year. I mean, from my perspective, a lot of this makes sense, but as you will be aware, some of this involves outside partners as well as ourselves. Yeah. So we will have to, and it's interesting that Eddie is here as well today, because there's certainly some of it that involves our planning colleagues as well. So we will put that together. Rob, was there anything, because I know you wanted, yes, go on.
Yeah, it was just to thank the committee for the recommendations, given what's going on in my own division in regards to Gabbo in Western and Bronnegarth and so on, things like this. Anything that can be done to help with that investment and those processes is welcomed at this point. So yeah.
And as is always the case.
Okay, come to the next Cabinet meeting. Then.
You'll be a regular.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so as I suggested at the beginning of the meeting, I'm now going to bring item 15 to the front of the agenda. So I know that we have some councillors, local members, who would like to speak on this matter. So if you'd like to rearrange yourselves around the around the room, and then we can go through. But to introduce this report, this is the report into Whitchurch Civic Centre options appraisal. Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. I might just wait for everybody to
stop shuffling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait for the musical chairs to stop.
There you go.
Okay. I'm delighted to be able to bring this progress report and recommendations to Cabinet at this stage. As you will all know, we were hit quite hard by the news that Whitchurch Civic Centre was fair riddled with RAC back in 2023, and that we would need to close it on public safety grounds. That was quite traumatic for the people of Whitchurch, and at that point we made a series of commitments that we would bring forward as quickly as we could a proposal to re-provide a facility that was wanted by the people of the town on this site, and that we would continue to provide the services in the meantime that we have been from the Civic Centre. Now, I'm aware the Town Council have a fantastic new interim home, and they very kindly welcomed the Leader and I there last week for a meeting. I'm also aware that the meantime library has become a temporary several-year stay, allowing this work to be continued so that library services will continue to be provided in the town as we committed to. And now the next stage is to lay out what we will do with Whitchurch Civic Centre. Now, you can see attached as appendices to this report both the structural survey work that was done over the course of late 2023, early 2024, which outlines the magnitude of problems of the Civic Centre. It also attached is a survey work that has been done within the town and surrounding area of Whitchurch for the users of the Civic Centre to express what they wanted to see on the site. And I think that they were rather clear in their preference for the Civic Centre to be reopened as quickly as possible. Now, at a Cabinet meeting about 18 months ago, we authorised the establishment of a working group comprised of Shropshire councillors, Shropshire council officers and Whitchurch Town Council, which has been meeting on a regular basis ever since and has brought forward a series of recommendations about what, as the representatives of the town, they wanted to see. Now, firstly, can I put on record my thanks not just to all of the members of that working group, but especially to Councillor Paul Wynne, who chaired that working group and made sure it remained on track and brought forward recommendations that were able to be implemented by Shropshire Council. That brings me on now to the specific substantive content of this report. And I will briefly explain the recommendations that we are bringing forward before I propose them. Now, the survey work and the recommendations brought forward by the working group are that their first preference would be for the Civic Centre to be reopened as quickly as possible in whatever means we could do to facilitate that. So, we are committing in the capital strategy £4 million to Whitchurch Civic Centre, and that will be utilised one of two ways. Now, alongside this work, there is still some further work that we are undertaking in the town, and that is the second recommendation is that we will be carrying out with the working group and the partners on the ground a full needs assessment and analysis, which will build on the survey reports that were carried out with the people of Whitchurch and the people who use the Civic Centre, to make sure that the reconfiguration of the Civic Centre provides the usable space that is identified as wanted by the people who use the centre. So that's really important, that we actually are not providing or re-providing facilities that weren't well used, and to ensure that what is provided on the ground in the Civic Centre is actually what the people of the town want. So what we're doing is we're taking what people have told us that they want to do, and we're putting that into a design analysis that will make sure that the reconfiguration of the building or the site will provide for what the needs of the people who use it and the people of the town have laid out. So that's the really important thing to point out, and that is why there's still some piece of work ongoing. The fact that that piece of work is still ongoing enables us to commit the £4 million now, but it also enables us to keep two options on the table moving forward whilst we do that other piece of work. That is, there are both Whitchurch Town Council and the North Shropshire Member of Parliament are committed to seeking external funding, if any is available, particularly from central government. So we're still giving them the opportunity to pursue those avenues until the point at which all the other work is done. That means that we can either use the £4 million that we've set aside as Shropshire Council to repair the building in situ, re-roof it, remove and replace the rack and asbestos in the building and make it sustainable for decades to come. Or if our partners are successful in bringing forward the external funding, that will enable a full redevelopment of the current building into effectively a full replacement facility, but a more modern and energy efficient one. So those two options are still on the table, and that's quite unusual for us to bring forward that in a cabinet report to remain two options on the table. But we wanted to make sure that this £4 million was secured in the capital strategy so that either option that remains on the table could still be delivered. Now, that's the reason why the recommendations are slightly more convoluted than we would normally bring forward, but I hope that the explanation has proved that there is good reason and justification for that for the people of Whitchurch that they will benefit from. So I'm aware that there may be some questions, particularly from local members who might want some clarification on specific points. So at this stage, I will move recommendations 3.1, which is comprised of 1A and B and 2. And I will invite any questions that I should hopefully be able to answer.
Now, I know that Mrs. Mullock is desperate to ask a statement or make a statement or ask a question. So go on, Councillor Mullock, over to you.
Okay. Councillor Peggy Mullock, I represent Whitchurch North. Good morning, Cabinet members. While I appreciate that the Whitchurch Civic Centre was inherited by Shropshire Council, it's very much at the heart of the people of the town. By agreeing to add the funding to the next year's financial budget, the amount to enable the roof to be replaced, and which then will allow the chance to match fund for a new build, you will be able to ensure the future of our centre. At this point, I'd like to thank Cabinet members and officers for all their help over the last months, especially in securing our library, which has been very much missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom? Councillor Biggins, I do apologise.
Okay. Leader, you yourself have described it as the very beating heart of Whitchurch. But now we do have light at the end of the tunnel. And I'd like to thank colleagues and officers for all their hard work in getting us to this point. But I'd also like to pay tribute also to the hundreds of people in Whitchurch and the surrounding area who've turned out to 2 large public meetings, took part in the consultation last summer with over 1,100 responses, and who have supported the Save Our Civic campaign. Today is an important occasion for Whitchurch. People will look back at this meeting and say that by making £4 million available in the capital budget Shropshire Council has indeed secured the future of the Civic Centre for future generations, and we all look forward to getting it open as soon as possible. I would just like to ask two questions, please. The first question is a hypothetical question, but would the £4 million be safe under a future administration? And the second,
Councillor Carroll.
yep, and I'll
let you back, Tom. Go, Councillor Carroll.
Okay, so that's a fair question. So we operate on a principle where no decision of Cabinet or Council can bind the hands of a future Council. But what I would say is we have made a decision, and a conscious and deliberate decision, to include this in the capital strategy. So any future administration down the line would have to similarly make a conscious decision to remove it from the capital strategy. Now, we committed to this 18 months ago when the first problems arose that we would find a solution, and I'll be crystal clear that, as I said earlier, it's unusual to put the money in the strategy with still two open options available. But we felt that, A, it was important to put it in at this stage because it proves Shropshire Council is serious about investing in Whitchurch, and it also provides security of match funding for our partners seeking external grant funding. So whilst I can never make any commitment about what any hypothetical future administration would do, what I would say is that having made this conscious decision to include this in the capital strategy, it wouldn't be wise for us to have done that if we didn't intend to see that through. But like I say, we are not able legally to tie the hands of future administrations, and they would have to take whatever decision that administration wanted to take if they wanted to undo the commitment we've made.
Tom, sorry, you said I interrupted you.
The second question is, this administration has managed to make massive savings, balanced budgets, and kept Shropshire Council solvent by living within its means. If a future administration called a section 114 and the commissioners came in, what could happen to Whitchurch Civic Centre?
Councillor Carroll, or do you want,
okay.
do you want me? Or, no. Okay.
No. I mean, I think that I think we're all aware of what the rules around section 114s are. But let me start the response to that by saying I believe Leader, you and Councillor Butler as the finance portfolio holder have both been crystal clear that we are not at the point of or approaching a point of needing to declare a section 114 notice, because we have a balanced budget this year. We are bringing forward later this month to Council a balanced budget for next year. And as we have said all along, we have a plan that is delivering and will continue to deliver financial stability for this Council. So in prefacing my answer, I would say that at this moment in time, I cannot foresee a situation that, regardless of the difficult financial circumstances that all local authorities are in, I cannot foresee a situation at the moment where we would, as an administration, call a section 114 notice. However, if, and I'll answer the hypothetical as well, if hypothetically further down the line a section 114 notice was issued by a future administration, then we can look to one of our regional neighbours in terms of Birmingham City Council for a recent example of what happens when commissioners come in following the issuing of a section 114 notice. And I'll leave the revenue side of that out of it because this is purely a capital question. But what happens is that commissioners will look at what is in our capital programme and what is in our capital strategy, and they will take a great big red pen to most of the lines in that, if not all of the lines in that, and they will strike them all out. And this money will be subsumed into, because what commissioners can do in that event that we as a local authority aren't able to do, is they can use capital to balance the revenue budget. And that is what has been done in local authorities up and down the country that have declared Section 114 notices. So whilst I would say that we are at no immediate risk of declaring a Section 114, and I think everybody around Cabinet has been clear that we have no intention of, because we don't believe it's necessary, if in future a Section 114 notice was issued, I cannot foresee a circumstance where commissioners would not take this £4 million away and use it to
and that's what happened in many other councils across the area, including in our other neighbours in Cheshire and Cheshire East. Sorry, but what, Gwilym? Yeah, Gwilym. Go on.
Just to add to that, Chair, I think the time is right to actually say, on this journey that we've had at the administration for the last 3.5 years, we have had a plan, and we are delivering on that plan. The finances aren't easy. They make headlines on the hard decisions that we have to make, and sometimes those savings aren't made straight away, but we make reserves and make processes for that. And all I'd like to say, Chair, this administration has full faith in the executive management team that that plan will be delivered, and hopefully issues like Whitchurch will be in safe hands under a Conservative administration. Thank you.
Chairman, on a point of order, if I may.
Yes, Ken.
And it's not a political statement. My understanding is that it is not a councillor decision to issue a 114. It is an officer decision. So no administration will be making the decision. It will be solely the Section 151 officer who sits alone and can make it over and above any administration.
That is correct.
So it's an officer decision, not an administration decision.
However, let's be very clear that it is shaped by councillors' decisions. I can tell you that now. I'll come back to you in a moment, Dean. Rosemary first. Paul?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to check. We are still on item 15, aren't we? Yeah, so could I ask, please, Chair, that we stay on the agenda, because we've got a lot of finance papers to go through.
The question that was asked was, what danger are we in?
But it's not really, and it's not really part of the agenda.
What not really? Sorry.
Future forecasting of what might happen to a decision that's being made today.
For the people of Whitchurch, it's a very real question.
It's very important.
I was asked at a meeting last week exactly that question.
It is very important for all of us, but we're looking at into a future prediction situation here about the general finances when we have several finance papers on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I don't accept.
I'm sorry, it's just electioneering. It's very wasteful time.
Thank you. I'm here to back up my colleagues and to thank the Cabinet. I'd also like to thank Leslie and Dean for their work, and especially Dean. I'd like to mention Phil and Steve as well for their hard work and our meetings, and the Mayor of Whitchurch. We had our meetings, they've all gone very well. A lot of work's been put into it. I'm not sure just to state as well, I think it's the only public building in Shropshire which had RAC. They happened to drop on our town. So I know, so this is why you've done it. I think it's great. Let's go forward. Option, we can put the roof on, fix the building, if they can find the funding, etc. It's all been worked out, and I'd just like to thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, I'm happy to second this, by the way, Councillor Carroll. Nobody has to explain to me the importance of community buildings in a local area. I think the one thing, yes, you're right, it is the only building that's got RAC, and in some ways we can be very thankful for that. In other ways, it's very, very difficult. But I think the thing that concerns me is that whilst I understand there is a real desire in Whitchurch to look at having a new build, my concern is that actually a lot of the people that speak to me directly in Whitchurch just want their civic centre back. So I think we need to be cognizant of that. So whilst there are two options on the table and there is much funding available, I think we do need to be pragmatic about the situation going forward. Sorry, Councillor Evans. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. I was sort of half summing up.
Thank you, Chairman. I note the answers and discussion here and those expressed with the help of the media. As I understand it, the number of 1,100 responses reflect the local concerns. This important town wants its local, much valued civic centre back in service. Many would wish to have some indication, however, of a timescale for future action, which I have not heard mentioned at all. Just it will be investigated. How long will this take? How long is a piece of string? I fully understand. However, there was a discussion about a 114 notice a few minutes ago, and can I add that this council is in the position it's in because of decisions being made by the previous administrations. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you. I'm glad that Councillor Evans agrees with that, because the position that this council is in is one of financial sustainability with a balanced budget, and a balanced budget coming forward at full council later this month. So I'm very grateful that Councillor Evans has recognised that this administration has put us on that footing, and thank you very much for that vote of confidence from the Liberal Democrat group. Now, moving on to the question that he asked, and you can shake your head, Rosemary, and grin slightly, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. So coming back to the question that Councillor Evans has asked in terms of time frame, as I set out earlier, we're going to carry out this design and needs analysis, which can be done very quickly, and I would hope would be done by the end of the summer. That is the kind of time frame that we've discussed, and that's a reasonable additional time frame for our partners to continue seeking external funding. If there's no further light at the end of the tunnel in terms of bringing in extra match funding, then we have the option of what we go forward with the funding that we've already put in, and that is the repair and re-roof of the project. But that is the kind of deadline that we're working to. So hopefully we should be able to get once we get tenders out, we should be able to get moving very quickly on that following that. I think that all I can say is that is the report. Those are the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Just finally, I think one of the things that everybody needs to understand, and again, this was a conversation that we had with the town council last week, and the local members were in place, was that we shouldn't underestimate the amount of work that it's going to take to actually repair that building. Because when people talk about re-roofing, it's not like we're just slapping a few tiles on. It needs major work, and the fact that the building is situated in a very narrow, cramped area of town won't help either. So it's not a quick fix. It's not going to be, even if we said we'll go tomorrow, it's not going to be fixed in 6 months. It will take a significant amount of time to do the work. Councillor Evans, last one, and then I'm going to take a vote.
Madam Chairman, and it's in reply to Councillor Carroll's last comment. There was £175 million in the capital that this council had in 2017. That is now down to about 25, which we'll see in the Treasury report later on, how much investments we have. 175 down to 25 million within, however, eight years. So there was plenty of money there, and thanks to this administration, it is now down to that amount.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's for. It's there to be spent on projects and one thing or another, and I'm delighted to say that in March, whatever date it is, we'll officially be opening Whitchurch swimming pool.
Point of order. Not that I say that very often.
No, that's normally reserved for the other side. Go on.
There's a confusion there between capital and cash. Okay, we have got a reduction in cash because we have paid off our long-term debts when they have become due for repayment. And on those long-term debts, a lot of people remember what the interest rates were in the 90s and the noughties, a lot higher than they were now. And you'll see when I bring the Treasury report forward, it is a lot better to pay off the long-term debt at high interest and then borrow when we need it at a much lower interest rate than historically we were paying. And that is also paying off the debt at a higher interest rate, more than we could get if we invested the money in the bank. This is prudent way of handling the finances of this council. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Carroll's made the recommendations. I'm happy to second those. All those in favour? Yes, absolutely. Proceed with Whitchurch Civic Centre. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Phil, for also coming in today, and thank you for the work that you've done on this. Okay, moving on to, no, pleasure. Moving on slightly oddly to item number 19, which is the proposed response to government consultation, strengthening the standards of conduct framework for local authorities. Councillor Carroll, you haven't forgotten you're seconding this, have you? You obviously have. So the reason I'm bringing this forward is because Councillor Carroll has an appointment, depending on how long this meeting takes, that he needs to get to. But I'm going to introduce this. Councillor David Evans would be with us today, but unfortunately he's at the hospital today, so can't be with us. This response was put together cross-party via the Standards Committee. I understand that a meeting took place on this. In effect, what I will say to you is that some of this has been talked about for a considerable number of years now, in the sense that I would say this, wouldn't I? But in some cases, the Standards Committee doesn't really have a lot of teeth. And we have had situations in other councils where members have been suspended for up to 18 months, but are still receiving their allowances. So you will see from, and I'm just going to bring up the recommendations now. As I said, Councillor Evans, I think are you on Standards Committee? No, you're not. Well, I know Councillor Carroll is, but effectively there was cross-party agreement for this paper, and if you look at the Appendix 1 or Appendix 2 rather, you will see the response. I know that we've discussed this in the past. Unless anybody has any specific questions, Councillor Evans.
Just to say, Chairman, if it was possible, I would second it.
Oh, okay.
It is something I think all councillors, all 74 councillors on this council would support. Let's give it teeth. It is as near as possible an independent committee.
Yeah, no, it was
outside of politics to judge councillors, and they should behave as per it is. But we need to give them teeth.
Yeah, Councillor Carroll, would you mind if Councillor Evans seconded it?
With pleasure, with pleasure. I will vicariously second it on behalf of Councillor Evans. I would just add that Councillor Evans is absolutely right. This was completely cross-party agreement, unanimity on this from recollection, complete unanimity on this.
Yeah.
It is a positive and very progressive step forward, and I'm delighted to second and endorse it.
I would actually probably comment that it's one of the most positive pieces of legislation that's come out of the recent government, but we move on from that. Councillor Evans, of course, you can't second it because it's a cabinet paper, but we take the absolute point. Councillor Carroll, are you happy to second?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I haven't got any other hands. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is just one thing before if we're still going at 12:30, I will give everybody a 5-minute break, just, Item number 7, Financial Monitoring Report, Q3. Councillor Gwynne Butler.
Thank you, Leader. It's Councillor Gwynne Butler, Portfolio Holder for Finance, Corporate Resources and Communities. The report shows the challenges we still face in delivering of the savings which take time, especially in relation to reducing the staff cost and the right sizing and resizing of the organisation, which needs to be done right and deliver our long-term plans. The financial situation is similar to what we have seen at this time of the year in the last 2 years, and totally qualifies our approach to ensure there is sufficient leverage in reserves at the start of the financial year against the ratio of savings. So where it takes more time to deliver, we have an agreed way forward from the use of placed reserves for that purpose. We await period 10 onwards and look to bring the budget in line within the capacity we have. I know this report has been debated at length, both at the collaborative budget meeting and at scrutiny yesterday. On that note, I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second for that one?
Yes, Leader, happily second.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. I note this report and the likely conclusions that it draws about towards the end of the year. And I realise there's still a quarter, 3 months left when it can do it. And I also note the slight improvement, but again, a some say huge overspend, which is being predicted that this council will incur this current year another failure to deliver the proposed savings, and yet again leave this council now in an even more dangerous state than it did last March, because our reserves are being depleted year on year. Our ability to absorb the cuts that are needed to meet the reductions in government help that is there. But really, 57% delivered of this year's savings, as is quoted. That is just not good enough. When the budget is set, it must be actual. It must be one that is attainable, not one which it is thought will do it. April the 1st is looming up quite fast, and by April the 1st, all the budget savings that is listed in the new financial strategy should really be put in progress, because there's a lot of savings that need to be made next year. But this is about Q3. I do note it, and as I said previously, yesterday at a meeting, I do say a thank you to the portfolio holder for making the information better available to all councillors. However, it is sad reading. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Butler's already mentioned that once about the way that we work this process. But anyway, Councillor Rosemary Dartnell.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to comment, please, on the fact that we continue, obviously, to make savings at the council, but we continue to be in a position where more savings are required. So it gets harder and harder, as we all know. The situation through the year, we've had good monitoring, monthly monitoring, which has helped the position, but it's helped us understand the position, but it hasn't really made any change. We're still, if we're lucky to be in the central position, most likely projected to be 35.5 million overspent at the end of the financial year, which is very worrying. Obviously, we have 1 quarter left to go, or 2 months left to go in reality. I think that I don't know if our reserves, I think at the end of the financial year, projected to be 3.5 million at this point. And I'd like to ask the Section 151 officer if he thinks that's sufficient for a body of our size and spending power.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dartnell. I would add that I think the term overspend is an interesting one, because what I would call it is over demand as much as anything.
Yeah, or undersaved or overspent.
Well, in terms of the current budget, we're not talking about the savings here. We're talking about, you were saying about overspent. I would call it over demand. However, Councillor Butler, and then I'll bring James in if he wants to, because Councillor Butler will no doubt explain what we do with the reserves on an annual.
Yes. Councillor Evans has said, thank you for the kind words, by the way, Roger. They are appreciated. And I know we have to have differences, but you know, that's the way of the game. In respect of the reserves, I think I'm going to get the parrot back out, Leader, because we keep repeating this. You say the reserves are deleted. In our midterm financial strategy, part of the process is that we repopulate those reserves on the 1st of April, so it mitigates any risk against future savings. And Councillor Evans is obviously fully aware of that. And that puts us in a stronger position should we have slippages moving forward. On the volume of the savings that we are trying to achieve, even the LGA have acknowledged they can't understand how we managed to get the volume of savings we've done year on year compared to a lot of other councils. And I have a bit of, I take umbrage slightly, Rosemary, when you talk about savings for next year, when the new government has withdrawn the rural services grant of 9 million, it's reduced our social care grant of 12 million, and we, out of 180 councils, were 177 on the list with the least funding. We were promised a floor of at least 4% increase of our spending power, and we've ended up with 3.8. The rural counties are being slaughtered by this new government, and the fact that the new Labour MP for Shrewsbury would not back our case, I find, doesn't care about Shropshire. Thank you.
One more now.
Thank you very much. My understanding is not that the MP for Shrewsbury did not back our case, as the MP for Shrewsbury asked for a different kind of dialogue. However, I'd like to.
I'd forgotten about that. Yes, that's right. Yes, the MP for Shrewsbury actually told us basically to merge with Telford and Wrekin. I think that's what she said.
And bring all social care in house.
That is not my understanding.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is not my understanding. However, it's welcome in the report to see that we've received £10.5 million of extra funding in the second half of last year, which finally gave us a small amount of money to the BSIP, which we've never had before, the Bus Service Improvement Plan.
It's all capital, Councillor Dartnell. It's all capital.
And also that we've received another £22 million worth of funding in the settlement this year compared to last in the total.
We received another
22 million extra in a total settlement from government.
22 million extra.
When actually, report.
Yes, but we were actually £28 million short on what we would have received had it been the same formula as last year.
Yes, but we have a new government, so governments change formulas, don't they, as the last one did, several times.
Well, I believe. You've accused me in the past, I think, on a regular basis, actually, of not calling out my own government, which I always did, because we always should have received further funding from the government that we did. What I've never had to do, I never thought I would sit here and have to say that actually, I suppose what I've always thought in the past is we should have got more, but I never thought I'd be sitting here with a government that actually gave us less than the previous funding agreement, which, you know, and as Gwilym said, the removal of the Rural Services Grant, which allows rural councils, it's not just us, it's impacted hugely on other councils. They just don't understand the cost of delivering services in the rural area.
Between 2010 and 2020, a 60% reduction in local authority funding.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing any change. I'm not seeing any change. I'm seeing even less understanding of local government.
Were we told not? It was the end of austerity, Leader.
Yes, I believe we were. Anyway, Councillor Schofield.
Thank you. I do sit here and listen with interest. I know it must be very difficult being in opposition and coming up with ideas and all that. But I'm glad that Councillor Evans has realised that he was publicly quoted as saying if we take over the running of the Unitary Council, that he will call a Section 114. Until now, he's realised that he can't call a Section 114, but he'd love to, and quoted as saying it. And as for the Labour leader, I mean, surely she can see what's going on in the country. I mean, Rachel from accounts, I mean, it's getting worse by the day. And then to sit there and try and defend a Shropshire councillor that was elected by the people of Shrewsbury that will not back Shropshire Council in its efforts to secure more funding, I found absolutely astonishing. And I was in the meeting.
To be fair, Councillor Schofield, we mustn't forget that we did receive more funding from the government, yes, because the between the draft financial statement and the official financial statement, we did actually secure further funding, and I'm sure we'll put that £4,000 to great use. Okay, yes, Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say that I've never said that the council should call a 114? Never. I've always said I would prefer to be master in my own house, as I think all councillors would.
Thank you very much indeed.
And I've always stated that, because that is what we want, because we are elected by the residents of Shropshire, and we need to deliver for them, not somebody.
And that's something that this administration has been doing since day one in 2021. We'll find you the clip of where you actually say that. Anyway, so I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item number 8, Performance Monitoring Report Q3. Councillor Rob Macy.
Okay, apologies to those that were at Scrutiny yesterday. It's going to sound very similar today, 2 days in a row. I'm pleased to introduce the Q3 Performance Monitoring Report for 24-25. It provides a comprehensive update on our progress in delivering the strategic objectives set out in the Shropshire Plan. It highlights our achievements, ongoing challenges, and the financial context in which we're operating. This quarter, we've updated 52 of the performance measures, with notable improvements in areas such as adult social care, school readiness, broadband access, and our workforce training. However, we acknowledge there are areas requiring further attention, including children's social work assessments, the household accommodation pressures, and response times to the Freedom of Information requests. As we continue to manage significant financial constraints, we are taking an agile, innovative and forward-thinking approach as a council. We are closely monitoring the performance and financial position through our systems and transparent reporting like the performance dashboard to ensure we can adapt quickly and make informed decisions that deliver the best possible outcomes based on the situation at the time. This means focusing on efficiency, sustainability, and making strategic choices that protect services while ensuring long-term financial resilience. That is why the bigger picture needs to be recognised. Yes, there are challenges, but there is also real progress, innovation, and a strategy in place to manage these difficulties. As ever with the report, it considers performance across the council. I am portfolio holder for some areas of the council, but you have the other portfolio holders in the room today that can pick up the individual queries. Thank you. And I move the recommendation.
Yeah, Chair, I'll second. Councillor Cecilia Mockley, Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health. Thank you.
I didn't think it was going to work then. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight, portfolio holder for children and education. It's just to give an update around in the report 8.5 and 8.6. So 8.5 is where we were on the stability of placements of looked after children and lengths of placement. Just to give an update, as from Monday, we're currently at, stability of placements at a good performance, 72% against a very aspirational target of 80%, and our stat neighbour and national average at 68%. So we are currently performing well. And on 8.5, sorry, I'm very confused here, it's moving around. So it's about the social worker timeliness on 8.4. We're currently at 65% completed in a timescale of Q3. This figure is affected by the number of assessments already out of time scales. This percentage is a whole service measure. At the end of January, the rate is 80%. So we are assured that performance is improving. The two assessment teams' completion rate is above 95% now, and several weeks have seen 100% completion rate, but this will all be formally reported in Q4. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. And Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. As alluded to, it was discussed yesterday at the scrutiny meeting, but and there were certain points brought up, but one of the most important to me is our staff, and that is in 8.16 where it says about stress. I recognise the pressures that staff are under, and I think every councillor would wish them to be looked after, assisted as much as possible. So, but it is of concern with that, and I'm sure that action is being taken to alleviate that. But it is a worrying aspect, I think, of the performance that is there.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Butler, did you want? No, you said your piece yesterday. That's fine. I'm not seeing any other hands. Councillor Macy.
That's fine. As I say, it was considered that there were a few points at scrutiny yesterday, nothing else that was brought forward that particularly had a material effect on today. So
yeah, and again, once again, thank you to the staff that pull all this data together for us, because those key performance indicators are making. I don't say they make life easy, but they certainly allow us to have the information very quickly, which is great. Okay, so I have a proposer and I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item number 9, Treasury Management Update Q3 24-25. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Leader. It's Councillor Gwilym Butler, portfolio holder, Finance, Corporate Resources and Communities. Again, these are our normal reports we bring forward on SIPFA guidelines for publication. All the recommendations fall in line with our capital strategy for 24-25, which was agreed by full council this time last year. And I therefore just move the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that one?
Yeah, happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst-Knight. Okay, Councillor Dartnell.
Yeah, just a very quick question. At 9.5 in the report, it says, at present, the council is using internal borrowing at a level of around 100 million. Assuming a borrowing rate of 5%, the level of saving per year is around 5 million. So I just wanted to check. I mean, I understand internal borrowing to be interdepartmental use of capital or revenue, I'm not sure which. Could you just clarify that a little bit, please?
James?
Okay, so the short answer is that rather than going out and externally borrowing, you're using funding that is available as cash to fund. So the process is exactly the same. You move the money to spend over here, but the money is available in the bank as opposed to borrowing coming in. So ultimately, you're saving the interest on that borrowing.
It's excess cash, which we're now depleting, aren't we? And saving us from borrowing. Yeah.
So
Sorry, yeah.
To confirm, taking advice from our Treasury advisors, we could have borrowed and kept our cash balances high. But as Councillor Butler said earlier, that would mean that we were paying interest and then the cash would be sat in our bank because we don't need to apply that amount and we'd be earning less interest than we're paying. So therefore, it's better to reduce the amount of cash balances down and not incur that kind of negative formula. If that makes sense.
So that though is depleting, isn't it? So we're not going to be in a position to be doing that in the future.
James?
Future, absolutely. We've reached that point now. So we are undertaking short-term borrowing from a cash flow point of view at the moment. What we're not doing is undertaking long-term borrowing at this point, because that would mean we'd be tying into higher rates if we borrowed now. So it's better to remove some of that internal borrowing by externally borrowing, but only externally borrowing over a period of 3 to 12 months. The view being that although that means you're continually refreshing that borrowing, it's at a lower rate. Sorry, it's a slightly higher rate, but rates will come down and then you'll borrow long term at that point. But we are under borrowed as an authority, so we will have to borrow going.
Councillor Butler.
I think it's important as well to understand the time of the year that we're actually doing this, because most people pay their council tax over a 10-monthly period. And so we have the 2 months where we don't have the actual income coming in. And as I bring you the outturn report, hopefully that income will increase moving forward as well.
And I would say that it's just part of prudent financial management. Okay. Yes, of course you can.
Just like to add, I'm glad our borrowing is where it is, not compared to our neighbours. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. So moving on to what is an item number 10 on the agenda, estimated collection fund outturn for 24-25, Councillor Gwilym Butler.
I have to say, Leader, it is so nice to have a bit of good news. And I'm very pleased to say that the collection fund estimated outturn for the year ending 31st of March actually shows a council tax surplus of 1.676 million and a business rate surplus of 2.603 million. This is arrived from a variety of things, mainly by revaluations by the valuation office of business premises. And I did mention when we did the council tax base back in December, when we looked at how many houses that have been built in Shropshire so we could decide how much money we're going to have in, that I was surprised of how many higher band houses have been built. And so that has an implication on the council tax as well. I'll move the recommendations, Chair, but what it will also mean is that on the 1st of April, when this takes effect, there will just be under £3 million, which under my proposals, I would like to put into reserves. Thank you.
Councillor Nellens, I'll second.
Hopefully you won't have to hear from me too much longer. It's Councillor Gwilym Butler. Okay. Portfolio Finance, Corporate Resources and Communities. Again, this report has been discussed at length at the collaborative budget and at scrutiny yesterday. I bring forward the midterm financial strategy. An important thing to note is how this may change between now and the full council, because there is still details of which the finance team are crunching together. And some of that is clarity to be obtained on some figures, and finance officers, as I say, are working at full stretch, both on calculating the delivery of the savings and putting together the budget proposals we have today. Further uncertainty is in front of us in view of the government spending review later this year. On top of that, we have the devolution agenda and how that may affect us, plus external forces such as trade tariffs, wars, etc., which can have a major impact on inflation and energy costs, as this administration has seen previously and we've managed with and we've dealt with. And I take Councillor Evans's point that when he votes on the budget in 2 weeks' time, he wants infinite detail that that budget will be delivered. So I hope he's got a hotline to President Trump and what he's going to do to our tariffs. So we're planning as best we can for the next year, but thereafter there may be several forces that will see change, and these should be brought forward in the quarterly updates, which I introduce in this administration due to the environment local government is living in. We've had an excellent consultation response to the budget with over 3,500 this year. I would like to thank the Collaborative Budget Group for the input into the report. We have been all living and breathing this process since September. The challenge we have had with the timetable in delivering the reports in line with obtaining the information has been very challenging this year. Before I move the recommendations, Leader, I must say a huge thank you to the finance team and specifically Ben Jay, who has been leading them, obviously under James, who has helped us tremendously over the past 2 years. Thank you, Ben. I move the recommendation as noted in the report.
Thank you, Gwilym, and I'm happy to second this report. I think the one comment I would make about this, which is actually unusual for previous years, is that the MTFS that is currently here today may well change before it goes to budget meeting in the 27th, partly due to the work that the Collaborative Budget Group is doing, but also as we get more cost certainty over some of the savings that we are looking to, unfortunately, have to make again next year. But as I say, I'm happy to second that. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, it was looked at yesterday, but it is of concern to me about the level of reserves that were there. And also, I note the resilience report, which is on page 48. And I'm not looking at intricately at pluses and minuses. It always happens in any budget. It's the overall 57% of the savings were only made, 43% weren't. That is not something the council can continue to have. We do not have the back end of the buffet, the availability to take that. But if one looks there, and also the audit report from the Grant Thornton, who looked at the budget and the figures that are due and have made comments about this year, they're saying that the budgets set by the council need to be realistic ones that can be attained. We haven't, and the staff here have worked diligently to improve it. And I share with you, Councillor Butler, about the finance team, and also our audits are almost up to date, which is very different to many other local authorities. So I accept all that, but it's the resilience and the future, and what is over the horizon that we don't know yet, but may come up. We haven't got a lot of fat left on the that we can actually get to. So it's going to be very problematic the next year, especially what may happen due to things beyond our control and the other side of the pond.
And I think, you know, it's at times like this when we reflect on actually just how difficult some of this financial information has been for us to deal with year in, year out. And I think what struck me, Councillor Evans, was a conversation I was party to last week, where I think Grant Thornton are going to be really busy looking at people's reserves, because as you'll probably all be aware, we know that certain councils asked to put up their council tax by significant amounts, and some weren't allowed to do so. Some were only allowed to put it up by 5% or an extra 5% or whatever, but a significant number of councils were actually told you need to use your reserves, to which one council replied, but that would wipe out our reserves within this next financial year. And they were told by MHCLG, so be it. And I think, you know, if councils are going, all councils across the land, we've always had reserves to use. We've had to use them. Other councils are now going down this route. You know, we've got councils in our own region that are in this position, and we still don't know yet what's happening about the send cap. So I think, you know, there are some serious issues coming up for us in the next 12 months. And, you know, what's quite interesting is that we are dealing with our situation and the way we, you know, work with our reserves. Other councils are not doing that. And I think, you know, there is going to be a real tipping point next year. Push Cam.
I don't generally make a habit of looking backwards. I'm generally a person who's looking forward. But when we seem to get constant questioning of not delivering the savings year on year on year, when I look at how we are acting with children's services and adult social care and what we have implemented in on those years, and I go back probably 3 financial years and the action we took then, and we said from day one, we may not get the benefit of this straight away, but it will be in the following financial years. And that process to me has been ongoing, how the evolution of this council changes and how we bring new practices into force. You're not just going to flick a switch and make the savings. It takes time to recruit the people, to change the culture, to change the attitude even of the clients you're dealing with. But what we are putting in place, living within our means, and in the future, it will make us a modern, efficient, sustainable council, whoever is in charge. Thank you, Leader.
Yes.
Yeah, and it is, we reap what we sow. And numbers of time in the council, I have urged the council to invest to save. Invest to save, invest so that there's future income. I heard the councillor say earlier on about the decision was made to pay off loans as they became due. Yeah, but we needed to invest some of that money that was in there to do it, as many other councils have. And when government start to pull money from local authorities, we are suffering, and we are suffering more than some others. And that's why I refer to the resilience index there, which shows where this council is, and it shows the problems that is just over the horizon if things from government do not improve. I hope they do, but we will see as the time goes on.
I'm interested in the fact that you say we've got problems that a lot of other councils don't have. I think it's easier to find the councils that don't have the problems, to be honest. Every week I see a new council has asked for emergency funding, and that's for the revenue budget, not even for capital.
What I would say, Leader, is yes, we may have some problems, but we're in control of them and we have a plan.
Right, I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on, Councillor Butler, I'm presuming that the Treasury strategy and fees and charges won't take too long, and then I'm going to do a 5-minute break.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor William Butler, Portfolio Holder, Finance, Corporate Resource and Communities. Again, this is our our Treasury strategy moving forward for 25-26. Just as I reported on the quarterly one last time for the 24-25, it is simply housekeeping and good management under SIPFA, and I move the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that one?
Mark Jones, Growth and Regeneration Portfolio Holder. Yeah, I'd like to second that. I'd also like to say it's amazing that Gwilym's still got a head of hair. I mean, he's done an incredible job in the last 12 months. And I'd also like to say that our leader, he's silent but deadly, Mr. Begley, has done an excellent job keeping the ship afloat. He's lost a lot of good colleagues and probably a good lot of friends in the last year with the redundancies and things like that. I think it takes a little bit of doing to keep going on this job. So I commend the work that we've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Okay, no hands in the room. I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Fees and charges, Councillor Gordon Butler, and then I am going to take a 5-minute break.
Councillor William Butler, portfolio holder, finance, corporate resources and communities. Every year, as part of the budget process, we have to bring forward the fees and charges. Again, this has been seen by the collaborative budget, etc., and noted. I would just like to move the recommendation as stated in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I can't remember who's seconding this one. Is it me? No, it's Rob. Thank you.
Happy to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Macy.
If I can, Chairman, I note, and it's going to council. It'll be part of that debate then, I think, rather than
Thank you.
do it now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I've got a proposer, I've got a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. I'm now going to propose, if that's all right with Cabinet, that we have a 5-minute break. So if we can go offline for 5 minutes, Ashley, and but That's all right. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back, everybody. We are now on item, just lost it now. We are now on item number 14, which is the determination of admission arrangements 26-27. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight.
Thank you, Leader. This should be a very straightforward paper. Following the recommendations from the Local Admissions Forum, in accordance with the School Admissions Code 2021 and the Schools Admissions Regulation 2012, approval is sought from Cabinet today to determine admission arrangements for 26-27 for Shropshire Council's community and voluntary controlled schools. This was taken to LAF, to the Local Admissions Forum, and discussed at detail. And obviously, with their recommendation, they support bringing this forward to Cabinet today. We've got Rachel here. Hopefully it won't embarrass you, but I'd like to, if we could, Leader and Cabinet, put on record a thanks to the team. I've made a few notes here because I'll just waffle and go on. I just think, the way that you've made improvements, which often is hard to see, but safeguarding. We know where our children are, we know where they move around schools, and that's a massive plus. Also regionally where we sit, and I say regionally, that's a massive region, isn't it, Middle England, but also nationally where we are right at the top for school admissions, which is no small task, difficult county to work with. But what's really important is our children of Shropshire go to their first school of choice now. A few, very small percentage, go to their second, which is absolutely unbelievable. So big well done, big thank you. I know the children appreciate it. School's not always easy, but if you're at the school you want to be, then hopefully it's a little bit easier. So if we could put on record a thanks, I'm happy to read the recommendations in the paper. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, I'm not seconding it. I believe Councillor might be.
I'm very happy to
second. Going to second it, but I'd echo that. Yes, there are a small number of children who don't get their first choice school, but interestingly, Councillor Hurst-Knight, I haven't had one single email this year from any of my residents. So thank you to the team from me as well. Councillor Dartnell.
Yeah, can I reiterate that? That's usually an annual event, isn't it? But it hasn't been this year, so thank you. Thanks to the team.
Yep. Okay, I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. There you go, you see. Thank you, Rachel, for coming anyway. Okay, so moving on to item number, it's now item number 16, which is Shropshire Council consultation response to the planning reform working paper, planning committees. Now, this is Councillor Chris Schofield's paper, but the one thing I do want to say is that this is a government consultation, which we took before both group leaders actually, and also the cross-party local plan group. And I have to say that local plan group is a really, really good sounding board. And we certainly have cross-party agreement on this. So let Chris introduce it first, Roger, and then I'll bring you in. Councillor Chris Schofield.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Chris Schofield, portfolio holder, planning regulatory services. Yeah, it was great to see cross-party and the likes of Councillor Evans and all those. I mean, this is it's a pragmatic response to some of them, and some of them we don't agree. I'm sure members have read the draft responses, and if there's anything too technical, we have got on hand Dr. Andy Wigley here to come. But if everyone's happy with them responses and cabinets, then we'll go from there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second that. And the one thing I would just say is I don't think any of us can underestimate the impact that this paper has had on some of our parish and town councils. I say some because I can only count for those that have spoken to me directly. But I think, we as councillors should be really concerned about the eradication of the democratic process here, and I know absolutely that they are. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. This again, I think, is all 74 councillors would be agreed with that and their response. It is something which is beyond the pale. If you live in a large city, yeah, you might be able to do this. But living in a shire county, it is not. It really does not recognise the different sorts of communities that we have, for example, in Shropshire, let alone Yorkshire or Humberside or anything like that. It is something which is not acceptable to me, and we need to resist as much as possible. And in that, I think we are all united.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Evans. And before I bring Councillor Motley in, the one thing I would say is the inference that it is the planning permission stage that holds up the process is rubbish. Certainly not in this council. Councillor Motley.
As a member of the local plan group, and I have been for a very long time, I must absolutely attest that it is a really useful group because we do have the ability and we have the time with our officers to sit down and really think hard about things and not take snap decisions. I must say I found that some of the proposals in this for these changes were really quite concerning. I really disapprove of the idea that, as you've said, Leader, that you just wipe out basically the potential for parish councils and town councils to have a say on this, because it is something that they value so much. Because the planning applications are happening in our local areas all the time. People know their areas and they know the problems within their areas, particularly in terms of things like flooding, for example. And this just seems to me to be a very top-down approach which the government want to take. It seems to me to be an approach which is there for their convenience and not for the convenience of the people that they're there to serve. So, to be honest, I'm delighted that there has been unanimity over the response to this, because I think it's absolutely right. Thank you.
Councillor Dartnell.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, there are Labour members involved in this, crafting the response, and we support the response. I'm pleased that the government is consulting on it.
I just hope they listen. Anyway, we have a proposer, we have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Item number 17. Sorry, Shropshire Schools Funding Formula 25-26. Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight.
Thank you. Another straightforward report. I'm very lucky that all this work goes to forums before it comes to me presenting in Cabinet, because we've had lengthy conversations, and I think I'd go as far to say that the last two meetings of School Forum, educational providers, head teachers and academy leads have all been quite happy. So we are possibly getting there. So really straightforward paper to consider the recommendations of the School Forum, and that we accept the Shropshire Schools Forum recommendations outlined in Appendix A and B on the funding formula for Shropshire schools for the financial year 25-26 for maintained schools and the academic year of 25-26 for all academies. Thank you.
Councillor Hurst-Knight, do I have a seconder for that one? Is that one your Mark? One of yours? Thank you. No, that's okay. Councillor Mark Jones is going to second that.
Yeah.
Thank you. As Kirsty said, it's been through all the forums and stuff. Yeah, you are quite lucky in that respect, I think. Okay, I have no hands in the room. So proposer and seconder, we have all those in favour. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item number 18, Shropshire Local Plan and National Policy Planning Framework Position Statement. Councillor Chris Schofield.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Chris Schofield, Portfolio Holder, Planning and Regulatory Services. This report broadly does the following. It provides an update to Cabinet on the implications of the updated National Planning Policy Framework, resulting impacts in Shropshire's housing land supply and implications for decision making. It recommends a response to the current local plan inspectors following receipt of their soundness concerns in January, and sets out a new timetable for the plan, making both for the current local plan process and the next local plan. The report asks Cabinet to note the implication to Shropshire resulting from the updated National Planning Policy Framework, published by the MHCLG on the 12th of December 24. In particular, the significant impact on Shropshire's housing need resulting from the new national standard methodology, which has resulted in an 86% increase for Shropshire to a new annual need of 1,994 dwellings. The immediate impact this has on the ability of the Council to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, which now indicates the Council can show a 4.73 years supply. The need to apply the presumption in favour of sustainable development to make decision-making on all relevant planning applications. The report also asked Cabinet to agree the response to the examining inspectors following the receipt of their soundness concerns on the local plan in January. This response is set out in detail in Appendix 1 to the report. In broad summary, it outlines a positive and pragmatic approach to the inspectors, but raises some surprise and disappointment with a number of their conclusions. We do not ask them to reconsider some issues in order to move the examination forward. Cabinet are therefore being asked to agree that over the next 4 months, officers undertake further assessment work to identify new land allocations for 1,500 dwellings and 30 hectares of employment land in the east of the county, and a new strategic employment allocation in Shrewsbury. This report does not ask for agreement on the location of these sites at this stage. If agreed, we intend to return to Cabinet in June to seek agreement on the preferred additional sites. It should be noted we are reliant on approval from the examining inspectors on whether we can proceed. The report also asked Cabinet to agree a local development scheme, an LDS, which sets out the timetable for both the current local plan for adoption and the next local plan, which the Council are now required to begin work on later in 2025 as a result of the large uplift in housing need, and agree that the evidence base for the local plan is considered material in decision-making on relevant planning applications. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Have I got a seconder for that one?
Yes, Leader, I'm happy to second.
You're reserving your right, are you? Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chairman. The information given out by the planning inspectors is not good news for Shropshire. Not good news for the council and also for residents. It will affect our communities and also, of course, the failure now because of the increases in housing which the government have set, the failure to have a 5-year land supply, which we were comfortably meeting. However, I do have to note the delays that has occurred in Shropshire Council bringing forward this local plan. I've highlighted many times at different meetings that the government had set a 15-year time limit for when local plans should be operative for after their adoption. Our local plan here only goes to 2038, and I note the inspectors asked for an extra 3 years to take it to 2041, so that the 15 years will be operable from when it is likely to be adopted if it goes forward in 2026. Makes it 2041. I do have concerns that we have appealed to the inspectors to put this to one side. We will have to wait and see whether that happens or not. Recent cases have been pointed out to me about where they have set it aside, but with the changing government and changing emphasis that is coming from government, I'm not sure whether that is possible. I do note, though, as I say, about the delays, and it's the capacity of the team to produce and work through this 6-month time limit to satisfy the inspectors' other demands, because that's what they are, demands. And really, it needs us all to coordinate together to promote this and try to get it to work. And I would appeal to those who are make it possible that really we need to ensure that the team has the capacity to do it. We've got the ability, we've got the capability, but it's the capacity to answer all the requests that will be made during the next few months in answering the planning inspectors' statements, which we do need to meet for the best interests of everybody in Shropshire. All the communities, if we're not careful, will have housing developments on their doorstep, which nobody wants. I pick up the word about sustainability, but it is up to the interpretation of it. If we do not have that 5-year land supply, I think Shropshire, as it did a number of years ago, will have problems, and so will many residents, and cause us all problems in our own areas. So yeah, take it forward, but please can we ensure that there is the capacity, ability, whatever word you want to use, that we can meet that very tight timescale. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Motley.
Information, or just a point of reminder. We were advised in October by the planning inspectorate that they did not wish us to proceed further with the local plan. We have obviously queried this with surprise and dismay. It took them 10 weeks to come back to us. So the delays that you mentioned, Roger, are by no means only on one side.
No, and I was going to say that actually, and I think it's worth noting that, you know, the local plan process started, well, it didn't start in COVID, but we had COVID in the middle of it. And when I look back to my first council meeting as leader, which was, I think, May, it might have been July 21, you know, we were still all covered in masks and glass screens at the time. I think the one thing I would add to this is that I was, as Councillor Motley said, it was slightly strange that we received a letter from them saying they had concerns, and then it took them 10, 12 weeks to tell us what those concerns were. The conspiracy theorist in me might say, well, we waited for the MPPF to drop first, but you know, that's just me being a conspiracy theorist, I guess. But I think Councillor Evans is right, and that's about the you know, what can happen if we don't have that 5-year land supply, which is why that Appendix 3 and that recommendation is so important to us, because we are so close to that 5-year land supply. Councillor Schofield?
Yeah.
Then
I'll
come back to you, Roger.
I agree with every word that Councillor Evans said. We're not the only authority in this position. I'm led to believe that there are lots of authorities in an even worse position, I believe. But 10 weeks, and then there was no indication of this coming at all. So this is not Shropshire Council's of its own making. It's the same everywhere. There's a lot more to come yet with the distinction between green and grey belts. It's going to be well, I did say to one officer, if you think there's been protests in Shirehall, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because that's what's going to come down the line, because it's going to be the Wild West out there otherwise, unless I absolutely realise the importance of this document, and this is a pragmatic way to go forward as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it is difficult. Sorry, can I bring Joyce in first? Because I know Joyce asked me if she could bring something to our attention. So let me bring Joyce in and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Yes, I have a representation here from Malcolm Andrew, who is chair of the Trevonian Rural Protection Group Management Committee, which I totally endorse. And it shows how important it is, because Malcolm's sat all the way through Cabinet until now anyway, to listen to what's going to be said on this. We note the implications of the government's new NPPF local housing needs methodology, massively increasing the requirement to 1994 dwellings per annum, and thereby that the current supply is below the 5 years and the present adopted SAMDEV plan is considered out of date. We note the report's recommendation that the council pursue agreement of current draft local plan rather than withdrawing it. Whilst being aware that addressing the inspector's concerns regarding the Black Country contributions may well have an impact on the settlements closest to that area and the Greenbelt, we believe that it is imperative to settlements across the whole county to have an up-to-date adopted local plan. We know that you are fully aware of the risks of an out-of-date plan with the free-for-all for planning consent on unallocated sites around the county from that situation in 2014-15. And if I can add, I was on a planning committee then and it was hell. We hope that the inspectors will accept the proposed compromise and that the council can deliver the required solutions by their 6 months deadline date. We would request that you do your utmost to ensure that the council fully resource the planning policy team to address the concerns of the inspectors so that the draft local plan can be adopted as soon as possible to minimise the out-of-date plan situation. We also note the need to commence the next review in the autumn against the new NPPF LHN targets, and noting the required 13-month timescale, would again request that the necessary resources be put in place to ensure that the LDS February 2025 programme is achieved. And I'm just wondering, can you actually commit to saying that you will meet those resources that need to be there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow. Short answer to that is no, I can't actually, because I'd have to look into that. I can't just say that off the top of my head, because that would be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the letter from Trefonnan is very similar, and I'm sure Councillor Evans will agree. You could put any parish council, town council on the bottom of that thing. Yeah. We've all got problems in our areas where we haven't had a 5-year land supply, but let's be clear that the local plan does not have an impact on the 5-year local land supply at this moment in time. What's had that impact is the MPPF and the ridiculous change in numbers. However, I suppose we should be grateful that in some areas it is a 400% increase, not an 86% increase. But yeah, absolutely. Roger, you wanted to come back in.
Yes, Chairman. It was just, I should have mentioned, I know there are different communities who have raised questions about their housing allocation that is in it, and within the needed speed with which to do it, I would hope those comments can still be taken on board and alterations, if possible, made. But it is important for the whole of Shropshire that we do have this 5-year and we do comply. But as I say, there are a number of different communities who have housing allocated to them, which they have on record questions about whether they should be there or not. And I might just asking the team to ensure that their voices are considered in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there's two different situations here, and I might have to defer to Eddie on this one. But if they're already in the current local plan, they will go through as is, I imagine. Eddie, do you want to come and just thank you for those online? Eddie West, our head of planning policy, is coming to just clarify that. Eddie, you heard the question, so thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think your question was in relation to the impact of the existing proposals in the draft plan. What the Cabinet paper seeks to do is take a positive attitude for those in the interim, whilst we don't have the 5-year housing land supply. That's an important point because we have sought to actually include a number of those in our housing land supply. So it's an important point that we do take a positive attitude for those applications as and when they approach the council. Having said that, the normal regulations and process of determining planning applications would apply. Okay, there's no change in that perspective. Okay, so all objections made or comments made on planning applications, particularly where they raise material planning considerations, will be part of that particular process and the decision making around that. So hopefully that provides you some degree of clarity on our position on that position.
Yeah, I'd just like to say before we finish, Leader, that Eddie, I hope I'm correct in this saying that it's almost unprecedented that if a local plan isn't adopted, that you then go and start another one. Am I correct, Eddie?
We've never had that situation in the past, and it's a consequence of the transitional arrangements around plan making because of the situation of the uplift in housing need. So because our new housing need position has so significantly enhanced, it means that we have to begin work on a new local plan as early as later this year, even if we're in the examination on the current plan. That's unprecedented. That never happens, but it's an obligation now we're under because of the government's intervention on the back of the housing need figures.
Yeah, Rob.
Sorry, I think I'll probably, having done that portfolio and done this for a while, and so I'll probably be a bit more forthright in terms of the things like the housing targets. I mean, doubling the housing targets overnight by the Labour government put us in the hands of developers. It makes a mockery of what we've been doing and following as a council. We have put in everything in place that is expected to put in place so you can make local decision making, be it a local plan, maintain a 5-year land supply, and that's what we've done. To change it overnight just leaves you with no option to adjust within a period and to meet that challenge. I know the council and the officers will do all they can to get us back to that position, but there's no doubt that that decision has made a big change to us. I think the response to the inspectors that we're proposing is slightly more wordy than I'd proposed myself, but it is planning and it is legal process and so on. So I would expect it to be longer than I would have gone with, but I do think it represents a pragmatic approach to what we're trying to secure, a plan that is right for us as Shropshire, rather than looking at too much of the wider picture. And many I've spoken to since this came out have said they're feeling, they get a sense of the rug being pulled at the last minute, as we've alluded to earlier after the government policy announcements, but taking into account there's probably some legitimate points that were raised that we need to address. So I think we just need to make sure we continue with what we think is right for Shropshire in terms of getting this plan through, get it passed before we then start on the next process. And the fears over having to start the next process before we'd finished this one was one that we had 5 years ago, when they announced what the processes were and the need for reviews and so on and so forth. But as you say, it's been slowed by other parts of the system and circumstances. So my only final thing was to thank Eddie and the team, because it is a mammoth job they are undertaking in trying to get us what we want for Shropshire. So
it is, and again, I know that I'm not putting words in your mouth, Eddie, but I know that again the involvement of the local plan group has been really useful in this. But you know, the one thing I would say is I think we should all be cognizant of the lady that spoke to us in the public questions today, that some of the language in that letter has set some serious fears, I think, around the Shifnal or Brighton area, and we know that in the past they had been particularly hard done by. So in terms of the 5-year land supply. So I think we have to be cognizant. There's a lot of people out there who are really concerned about this. But anyway, I've got a proposer. I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. That does bring us to the end of this meeting. We did actually manage to finish before 1 o'clock, which is no small triumph. And I see you all on Wednesday, the 5th of March. But please note that that meeting starts at 2 p.m. Thank you.